Films about gladiators are very common, some of which are artistic masterpieces that relate to the social injustices and importances of war within the Roman Empire, while others are total flops. The films that focus less on historical accuracy and more about common movie tropes do very little to further the overall plot of the film. From Kirk Douglas in his movie Spartacus, to Charlton Heston in Ben-Hur, to Russell Crowe in his movie Gladiator. The social depiction of gladiators surrounds common entertainment and media. These depictions of gladiators in the common media all have three things in common. One, strong, burly men, who are two, brave, and three, who fight to the death in an arena surrounded by thousands of people. However, these depictions of gladiators are usually only partially true. First, I would like to talk about the importance and the origin of gladiators. Second, the gladiators in the time period from 200 to 400 AD, which were commonly slaves. And third, how gladiators showed their dominance in the Roman Empire and how their fall tied into the downfall of the Roman Empire as a whole. First, what were the origins of gladiators? And what was their importance in the Roman Empire? Gladiatorial events were a token of the Roman civilization, a brutal form of sacrifice adapted from the earlier civilization of Etruscans. According to Evan Andrews in an article entitled 10 Things You May Not Know About Roman Gladiators, he states that gladiators were originally part of a blood right ritual. More specifically, gladiators were merely two ancestors of a wealthy noble who had passed, attempting to gain the rights to his social position and wealth. This funeral ritual over blood right was very common in the Roman Empire, beginning in 150 BC, before the rule of Julius Caesar. When Julius Caesar began his rule of the Roman Empire in the year 100 BC, he frequented these rituals and became very fond of them. He questioned why they couldn't have more battles, and therefore began starting gladiator battles merely for fun. During this time, people saw the ridiculousness of these battles and chose not to participate, which understandably frustrated Julius Caesar. This frustration grew into an intense love of blood sport and caused Caesar to begin taking prisoners and slaves to fight his battles. Next, especially during the time of Julius Caesar, the majority of gladiators were slaves, forced into captivity and battle. According to the Encyclopedia of Gladiators, slaves were used to battle, but the slaves battling is more significant than we might think, because it reveals another myth that many had originally believed because of the media. Gladiators did not always fight to the death. This ties into one of the most common movie tropes best seen by Russell Crowe's Gladiator, where upon striking his opponent to his knees, he looks up to a clearly displeased king. To see him aggressively give a thumbs down, showing his disapproval because Crowe had not finished the job. And although upon first review, this doesn't seem like a big deal, we need to look at the bigger picture. Because the gladiators were not always killed, they were essentially tortured for the entertainment of the people and for the entertainment of the king. Gladiators were essentially the same thing as today's UFC fighters. They received medical treatment, and many of them had a fan base, except they were fighting with swords and fists. These brutal weapons caused many to leave the arena with broken arms and limbs and lacerated faces, leading to permanent trauma. This sort of constant blood sport trauma led to slaves being morally downtrodden and incapable of continuing to fight. This was a serious issue for slaves. Oftentimes, the only chance that slaves had to be freed was to kill a certain amount of people, but as previously stated, very few people were actually getting killed in battle, and you can't kill if you can't fight. Of course, even though the majority of gladiators were slaves, there were always those few who chose to fight. Because of the severity and gravity behind actually fighting, it caused many people to envy those who fought. Searching for fame and fortune, Lower class citizens and sometimes even wealthier nobles sought out to fight for themselves. Again, referencing the UFC, gladiators often were able to get a sort of sponsor from merchants and other high ranking nobles. This sort of financing often pushed non slave fighters out of poverty and moved them to higher ranking social classes. This also ties into the fact that women also fought as gladiators. During this time, women were often seen as second class citizens and lower than men. But like men, women fighting would give them the opportunity to gain more respect and social opportunity. Another classic movie trope that we should cover is another scene depicted in the movie Gladiator, where General Maximus, played by Russell Crowe, is placed in the arena by himself. After a short time, a bell rings and a gate begins to open. Upon the gate opening, a large shadowed beast emerges from the darkness. You can see its large muscles and teeth. And finally, the light protrudes off of the fur and the beast. This creature is actually an adult lion. Although the idea of a mere man fighting such a massive beast, such as a lion, is rather exciting to moviegoers, it's actually very rare that such events occurred in the arena. In that same article written by Evan Andrews, he states that animals were sometimes killed in the arena as an opening ceremony of sorts. But more commonly, animals were trained to do tricks, such as jump through hoops and stand on their hind legs. Finally, how did the downfall of gladiators and gladiatorial fighting lead to the overall downfall of the Roman Empire? The downfall of the Roman Empire was caused mainly by religion mixed with violence. According to website empiredrome.com, the Roman Empire began to crumble because of the introduction of Christianity into common Roman society. The Roman citizens who once saw the gladiatorial battles as exciting and money-making opportunities had found God. This meant that these people who once attended the battles with excitement now saw them as cruel blood sport and no longer supported the fighting. This lack of viewership led to a lack of financing for both stadium builders, merchants, and gladiators alike. This lack of financing and viewership also led to a lack of gladiators, because those who once chose to fight now also saw the sport as cruel and unusual. This sort of sportive downfall was a major issue in Roman society. Gladiators and their battles, like sports today, had become a major part of the Roman economy, and there was a significant amount of money that was no longer being circulated. And therefore, the Roman Empire entered an economic depression in the year 390 AD, according to History.com. This depression caused Fabius Romulus Augustus, who was the ruler of Rome at the time, to be two things. The first is very reserved with his social interactions because, according to ushistory.org, he was worried for his life. And second, he became incapable of managing the citizens of Rome as they grew economically uneasy. This unrest in Roman society gave way for the rise of Eastern Europe to finally take over when in 395 AD, the ruler of Germany, Leader Odoacer, was able to conquer and put an end to the vast Roman Empire, and subsequently gladiatorial fighting. In conclusion, the importance of fighting was once a noble and just cause. The search for wealth through birthright somehow evolved into something that Julius Caesar, the ruler of Rome, wanted it to be: a vicious blood sport. The ideas of gladiators depicted in common media are very often false or over-dramatized for the purpose of drama or excitement. It is important that we look at the details of the Roman Empire as a whole, along with gladiators at the time, to get a clear picture of the real gladiators. Overall, the fall of the Roman Empire was a fall that no one can forget, because it highlights the effect that religion and the loss of common social values have on a society. The changing ideas of godly-like actions led to the downfall of gladiator battles and subsequently led to the overall downfall of the Roman Empire. That is why we must also remember the importance of gladiators when remembering the importance of Rome. Thank you.